Let's talk about loops. I have briefly mentioned what loops were, but we didn't really go too much in depth and we didn't give out a formal definition, so this is the time for it now. Basically, a loop is a sequence of events that are happening continuously until a certain condition is met. Think about walking. When you're walking you want to get from point A to point B, what you do is you first take a step, then you take another step, then you take another step, then you take another step until you get from point A to point B. That's you looping from point A to point B. So first you took a step, then you took another step. That's the same action happening repeatedly. And the condition is until you get from point A to point B, do not stop taking the steps. Now let's go ahead and see it in an example. What I will do is I will first write an example without using a loop, and I will say console write line, and I will print saying this is line 1. So I'm printing to the console saying this is line 1, and then I'm going to copy and paste it just 5 times. I want 5 lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And you would definitely guess that it would just have 5 lines saying this is line 1, this is line 2, right? All the way to 5. Great. But the question is, what do we do if there are 1,000 lines? Obviously, we're not going to go and write thousands of these because that would be very time consuming. And also, we're repeating a lot of code, which is not good practice. So let's actually use loops. But before I do that, I will actually comment this section out. And the way you can do that is by using the shortcut Control-KC. So if you press Control-KC, that will comment out the selected section, which is just a great shortcut to know about. If you want to uncomment it, then you can say Control-KU. So let me go and comment it out again. And this just means that when the code is being compiled, this will not be taken into consideration. This is just a comment, so this can be anything you want it to be. And comments are just for you to either remind you of things or tell other developers helpful tips about your code. Let's go ahead and write this in the form of a loop. I will say for int I equals 1, then I will say I is less than or equal to 5, and then I will say I plus plus. Then I will say console write line, and you've already guessed, I will say this is line, and then I'll pass an I. Let's go ahead and print this out, see what it looks like. And there you are. Very identical, right? And it's actually exactly the same thing. This is line 1, this is line 2, all the way to line 5. Now, this is the power of looping. You do not have to repeat your code, and you can increment certain variables that you need within that loop to get you to the next step. So let's actually go over the format. First, you have the for reserved keyword, which you need to use. Then you have parentheses, and within parentheses, you have the initialization, you have the condition, and you have the incrementer or the decrementer. So first you initialize the variable. This is the variable. So you, just like you would initialize a variable somewhere else, right? You would say int I equals 0, like this, or j in this case. We can't really repeat the variable name. Just like that, you would initialize a variable, and that variable in this case is int, and you're saying this variable will start at this point. Think of walking and think of this as your point A. So you're going from somewhere. You have to start from somewhere. In this case, we want to start from 1 because that's where our starting point is. If this was 5, I would be 5. But in this case, it's 1. So this is our starting point. The next thing is the condition. So do this loop, right? Execute the body of the loop, the for loop, until this condition has been met. In this case, the condition says until I is less than or equal to 5. So if I is less than or equal to 5, then execute this loop. So if it's 1, it's definitely less than or equal to 5. If it's 5, it's definitely still less than or equal to 5. If it's a 6, then this won't be run anymore. And then obviously the third section is the incrementer. So after each iteration, the first time you iterate, this will be 1. Second time you come back around, you will go here, right? You will say, is the condition met? Yes, it is. Then you will increment it, and this time it will be 2. And you will come here, and I will be 2. And so on and so forth until I is 5 and then I is 6. One quick note, however. This might make you think that the I should always be incrementing, but that's not really the case. It could be incrementing or decrementing. It doesn't really matter. It depends on your situation, on your scenario. So this could have actually been going down and saying, this is line 5, and then this is line 4, and 3, and 2, and 1. In that case, we would just say, start from 5, and until I is greater than or equal to 1, then I should be decremented. In this case, it will actually go through, first time it will say 5, second time around, the condition will say, okay, well, now you're decremented to 4. Is 4 greater than or equal to 1? Yes, we'll say this is line 4. Also, we'll say this is line 3. On the next iteration, we'll say this is line 2. On the last one, it will say, is 1 greater than or equal to 1? Yes, it's equal to 1, so it's including 1, and you would print the last line, which would be, this is line 1. And then you would go around, and I would be 0, but 0 is not greater than or equal to 1, so it would actually stop the loop. So let's actually see what this does. And, as expected, see? This is line 5, this is line 4, this is line 3, this is line 2, this is line 1. So I just wanted to mention that very quickly because it could be incrementing the variable or decrementing it, and the condition also depends on your specific scenario. So this is great, and this is how we'll loop using a for loop. There are other ways in C# that we can use in order to loop, but this is one of them. So let's talk about the other ones in the next videos.